Hi, folks. We're excited to bring you our second episode of our Pit Bull series with the incredible Zach Skow. Don't forget to check out our giveaway page. We'll be giving away a set of animal rescue books, along with a dog goodie bag and a cat goodie bag. Go to thisispawprint.com/giveaway for more information. Thanks, and on to the show.
We had all this momentum and people just kept saying, well, you should do this for a living. And I go, well, I don't know. I'm a drunk with the dream is going to, but people just wouldn't let me say no. And we never looked back. It's just been this living, breathing, growing organism that fed by selfless individuals and compassion and hard work has become something truly remarkable.
This is Paw Print, an animal rescue community, episode 68. I'm Harold Ree.
And I'm Nancy Ree. Today's guest is Zach Skow. Zach is founder of Marleys Mutts Dog Rescue in Tehachapi, California. Several years ago, Zach was dying of liver and kidney failure from his struggles with alcoholism and drug addiction. Zach credits his survival to his rescue dogs, Marley and Tug, along with his father's love and support. As Zach says, a pit bull saved my life. If you want to learn more about Zach Skow and Marleys Mutts, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/68. That's the number 68.
Little delight for everybody. My last name Skow means forest in Danish. So that can be an easier way to remember it. It was originally Skov. But I started Marleys Mutts 8 years ago, a little bit less than 8 years ago. I was diagnosed with end-stage liver disease, cirrhosis, acute cirrhosis of the liver. Given less than 90 days to live, as an alcoholic and a drug addict, you're not eligible for a transplant unless you have 6 months sobriety. So I was admitted to this comprehensive program to kind of help keep me alive until I had my 6 months, upon which time I was sent home they couldn't keep me in the hospital anymore, although I was very sick. Insurance kind of breathes down your neck, and they took me off all my medication, saved for a few, and said, stay close to an emergency room. And what you need to do is accrue sobriety, try and find a will to live and get physically better. I was prepared for none of those things and really just wanted to kill myself. I was not used to life without alcohol. I was used to drinking 24 hours a day. I got addicted to Dilaudid and morphine in the hospital and fentanyl. So what happened was, I've been doing a little bit of work with the Humane Society before I got sick, just as like a last ditch attempt to become a decent human being. And I loved the work, and it helped me get out of myself. And so what I did was I started using my adoptive shelter dogs to kind of get me physically better, get me on the road to recovery, taking 10 to 50 yard walks, because at that time I had ammonia build up on my brain. I couldn't walk very far. I was very unstable. I'd been in a hospital for so long, my muscles had atrophied. I was bright yellow, 140 pounds with a huge stomach, a condition called Ascites that is the result of liver and kidney failure. And really what it was is my dogs wouldn't let me die. They just looked at me every day, and my dogs, Tug and Marley. Well, when I went through opiate withdrawal, having my dogs close to me, touching me, laying in bed, going through that experience of full-blown hallucinations and basically mini seizures, really helped to have them with me to keep me plugged into reality. My dogs would look at me every day with this, first of all, like I was the greatest human being on the planet. I had it going on from A to Z, and it's hard not for it to have an effect. And so it did. And I just started to get out there, and fast forward 6 months, by the time I became transplant eligible, my body had healed itself enough to not immediately need transplant. And then I started taking in more dogs. I started a large dog foster program for the Humane Society, started taking in 2, 3, 4 dogs at a time with the help of my dog Marley. And we started writing up posters. I started getting creative by writing what I felt about the dogs and taking good pictures of them. So the dogs helped me with this whole spiritual, emotional, even like vocational training while I was getting better, while my liver was healing. We had all this momentum, and people just kept saying, well, you should do this. You should do this for a living. And I go, well, I don't know. I was drunk with the dream is going to become the founder of a nonprofit organization. Like, give me a break. But people just wouldn't let me say no. And we never looked back. It's just been this organism of itself, this living, breathing, growing organism that fed by selfless individuals and compassion and hard work has become something truly remarkable.
So how long have you been sober? What kind of drugs do you need to take to kind of keep you healthy?
The drugs I take to keep me healthy are Veg-E-Tables.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been sober since October 12th, 2008. And I should have been sober since August 3rd, 2008, the day I checked into the hospital. But I drank a month after I got out of the hospital.
Huh.
It goes to show you the depths to which alcoholism and drug addiction will take you. I had been out of the hospital for a month. I was still very sick looking, but I had gotten better. I'd started going to meetings. I had started walking with my dogs, and my dad went to Brazil for 48 hours. And he had been babysitting me. It was just my dad and I. It was my dad and I. This whole adventure was really a love story between a father and a son, and a father's will to just never say die. Between he and my dogs, he was just not going to let it happen. But he had gone on a business trip, and I found this spare set of keys to the truck and drove myself to the liquor store. And I was pretty good at drinking, so I didn't often black out unless there were a lot of drugs involved. And I blacked out for 2 days. I don't remember most of it. I went to the store again based on the amount of bottles that I saw when I woke up. So when he got back, I had to walk over to his office, and I took my sunglasses off so he could see how yellow my eyes were. And I said, we have to go to the hospital, and because I was puking up blood at that time.
This was from that 48-hour bender when your dad went to Brazil, or was this a different?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, this is because I was still sick. So
Right,
I'd been out of the hospital for a month.
Unbelievable.
And I'd been healing for a month, but
Right.
just by the process of binging myself in the 3 months that I was in the hospital and out, but 48 hours of drinking set me back considerably. They had to drain my stomach, as soon as I got to the hospital. And that was the last time I drank. My dad had just looked up at me when I told him that I drank again. He looked up at me and he said, "You've killed yourself. You've killed yourself. You've killed yourself." And he started to weep. And then that was the last time I drank.
What's your eating lifestyle? What's your exercise lifestyle? I mean, how do you try to live that healthy life?
I juice every day. So, I have a blend tech. I upgraded to a blend tech. So I make smoothies every day. That's basically for 1.5 meals. I have a huge vegetable fruit shake. So that usually involves ginger, mint, blueberries, spinach, kale, sometimes carrots, cucumbers, celery, pineapple, kiwis, whatever I can get my hands on. Toss it into that blender, and then yogurt, and go to town. And I did a lot of running when I first started. I started to run a lot. We run the Chicago Marathon every year on my sober birthday. The Chicago Marathon falls on the weekend of my sober birthday usually. So we've done that for 3 years in a row.
I don't think we're going to have a lot of alcoholics listening to our show, but
You'd be surprised.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, if you did have some advice to offer folks who are going through drug addiction, alcoholism, what would you say to them?
Well, there are far more people that struggle with alcohol and drug addiction than you would ever know. That's the whole point of being an alcoholic and a drug addict, is that people don't know. We're professional, secret keepers. But my advice to people who are struggling would be to reach out to somebody else. One of the things that I struggled with is that nobody understood what life was like to be in between my ears. Nobody understood what it was like to walk around in the bad neighborhood that is my mind. I was tragically unique. My circumstances were different. What I've been through as a kid, what I was currently going through, whatever. And it turns out that just opening myself up to people, going to meetings, sharing about my experience, and gaining some strength and hope was a lot easier to do than I thought. I never in a million years thought I would be going to meetings or sharing with other people about my disease and having it make a difference. And it really did. And then, of course, being of service. Part of the reason why we use and drink so much is a variety of things, hereditary, what you've been through psychologically in life. And then, of course, the tragedy of self-obsession. We are egomaniacs with inferiority complexes. All we think about is our own insufficiencies. And if we just share about that and talk about it and gain some momentum, a lot of it can fall away, and you start to discover new aspects of your life by just being open. And then, of course, you can find a God of your understanding. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Muslim, but I do believe in God, and it's been a wonderful journey to discover God as I understand Him.
Right.
And it's always in flux, which is interesting too. My God will include you after this interview. My God includes my dogs, my family, my ancestors, the great blue sky, the mountains, whatever. And it's up for me to decide it. It's not. There's no dogma that I have to adhere to from some book.
Several years back, you actually started this animal rescue organization. What were sort of the epiphanies? What were sort of the oh crap moments as you're trying to build this thing from scratch?
Oh, well, it was a series of very devastating hurdles. I had saved up. I started this by myself. Like I said, I was a drunk with a dream who just panhandled at meetings for money for veterinary bills. I had the veterinary hospital helping me out, and I just put posters up all over the place. So I developed kind of a following because of all the different places in town that had my posters up. People would read them and thought they were funny, and that's how we generated adoptions. And I remember after like 6 months, I had saved up $3,000 in the bank, which I thought was more money than God.
Right.
And
Woo! Right.
I got it was a huge victory. And then I got a litter of parvo puppies and lost half the puppies and lost all my money.
Oh no.
So this is before I could treat parvo at home. I had to do it all at the hospital. And 7 years ago, parvo seems to be less survivable than it is now. And so I lost everything then and thought, what am I going to do? And I didn't feel comfortable asking for money because I felt, all of the pains of my past would bubble up. And I felt really anxious. I was anxious enough as it is. I was still new at life. I was scared of people, places, and things. So having to get outside of my comfort zone constantly and talk to people and do all that stuff was new for me. And then people kept telling me it was a mixed bag. Don't apply for nonprofit status and do apply for nonprofit status. People said you'll never be able to make any money, certainly not enough to survive, and you're going to end up going into debt so much that you lose your life. And you're working so hard as a newly sober person, you can't be going into debt like this. You have to stay for profit and generate revenue that way. But I ended up electing to apply for nonprofit status. We got that. I had a lawyer friend help out, John Linford and Associates, and a bunch of other people just encouraging me on. And so we got nonprofit status in May of 2010. And yeah, that was a big difference. That made a big difference, certainly, because we could start soliciting funds properly. That was when we really got the Facebook and the website up and going. And it's just kind of all been, it's blown up since then because we've become so much more than a dog rescue. Things, it's kind of the field of dreams mentality. If you build it, they will come. If you coalesce all of these elements into one organization, and all these elements are rescue and rehab. And then of course we have a Miracle Mutts program, which is we take our rescue dogs who have been through service and therapy training that we put them through, and we take them all out into the community, into the homeless center, the rescue mission, the mission at Kern County, Hearts Connection, Valley Achievement Center, Bakersfield Vet Center, all these different places for people with learning disabilities, homeless, veterans, children, elderly. We've done, you name it, we've been there. Or we have a program that's going on there. And then we have a huge spay-neuter program as well. So, and then we keep just adding things onto it because it makes sense. We're utilizing the human-canine bond to the greatest degree. We're trying to use rescued dogs to help rescue people, just like what happened to me.
What kind of credit do you give to the huge Facebook following? In some ways, you've become sort of not only nationally known, in some ways you've become internationally known.
Well, what happened is I got vulnerable. That is there's a couple of recipes for success. And one is to be vulnerable about what you're feeling, talking about addiction and alcoholism and recovery and what I've felt, what I'm feeling, how it relates to the dogs, and also having some really prolific stories, some really amazing stories of triumph and resilience, just the typical things that dogs will teach us. Dogs that have been shot, stabbed, set on fire. Every scenario you can imagine we've had in the 7.5 years we've been doing this. And to watch them, the people come together, the dogs succeed, and to have these examples of triumph that we can then take with us, put in our pocket, and apply towards our own lives. is what's so important. To watch somebody who should be dead from liver failure, easily should be dead from liver failure, succeed and be able to pay it back to the animals who are now in turn helping other people is just a magical formula. I mean, it's not without its demons. You open yourself up and you get a lot of hate. I've never experienced more hate in a line of work than in rescue. You're always doing something woefully imperfectly in the minds of some, and they feel the need to let you know it. And if there's one thing I could change, it would be that rescue is such a uphill battle. We have such a tough road ahead of us, and that if we all teamed up and empathized with one another and really understood what the other were going through and focused our attentions proactively towards good rather than backbiting and tearing one another down, there's so much more we could accomplish, because it's remarkable. I think that's why a lot of people don't involve themselves in this work, is it's unnecessarily negative. People assume that because you have a certain reach on Facebook that everything is just easier for you. But I mean, the truth is we owe a tremendous amount to our social media following. It has been the difference between our success and failure, because we live in an obscure county. We live in Kern County, a very poor area of California that might as well be the dark side of the moon. We have a handful of rescues here, whereas there's 400, 500 in Los Angeles. There's so many of them, but we have a very similar problem numbers wise, and we just don't have the help. But we certainly do have a lot of negativity, and I personally don't understand it. And I also haven't been very good at letting it go. Sometimes I have a tendency to take things personally, and I'm getting a lot better at not doing so.
What are some of the biggest issues? Is it overpopulation in general? Is it pit bulls? What do you see?
Oh yeah. Well, we see pit bulls and chihuahuas a lot of. We see a lot of hoarding cases because we're the agricultural sector. We're kind of rural meets city. There's a lot of breeding. Spay and neuter is a big issue. So that's why last year we did 1,500 spay and neuters for low-income families. That in and of itself is a Herculean task.
Wow, that's a lot.
So we're working our best to try and cover it from every aspect, from every angle. Education is big, so we spend at least 2 days a week at schools in our community. We have our Miracle Mutts team go to different schools and make presentations about compassion, animal welfare, and spay neuter. Recently, our local animal services chief, he kind of made a declaration that he wants our county to be no-kill in a few years, and that's a really ballsy claim considering we euthanized 22,000 animals a couple years ago. Had an 80% euthanasia rate for dogs. So to make that claim is very ballsy, but it's been terrific, and it's been a wonderful call on his part, because it really has kickstarted the movement, and just the fact that he had the guts to say it implies that he has the faith in this and the organizations and the community to support it. And we're getting out there doing it.
We're talking to Zach Skow of Marleys Mutts. You talked a little bit about Marley and Tug. What animals really have touched your heart, and why?
Too many to count have been profoundly impactful, where if you were to just look at their story, you would say, oh my God, whatever I'm facing in my life today, I can get through, because look at what this dog has done. I have a dog named Hooch who had his tongue cut out, his ears cut off. We got him from our local shelter here. He's a French Mastiff. And we have to feed him by hand every morning. Well, when we first got him, he was barely 50 pounds, and we couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. We knew something was wrong with him, but he was so skinny. He had viral pneumonia. He had just a variety of problems. And it wasn't until we intubated him that we realized that his tongue was missing. He's like the happiest dog I've ever met in my entire life. He loves it. And he's perfectly confident. He's not shy. It's not like because somebody cut his ears off and cut his tongue out that he's resentful. Dogs don't feel resentment. Loves people, loves other dogs. And aside from when you're carrying like a broom handle or something like that, he'll panic if you.
Oh, really?
He will lose his mind if you approach him with any sort of thing, large implement in your hand. But other than that, he's just he's the happiest dog in the world. And, he weighs 95 pounds now, and we've taken him to dozens of schools and places and shown him as an example of how to be resilient and persevere. I'm looking at one right now in front of me, Lala. She's sleeping on the ottoman. She's from Thailand. She was a meat trade survivor, so she was going to be used for dog meat soup. To have seen her out there and then I brought her back from Thailand. And to see her here passed out on my couch is it's pretty cool.
The dog farm photos. It's like these dogs are some of them are just gorgeous looking dogs. And then you're like,
yeah, I brought a golden retriever back from Korea,
right?
From a dog farm that was deplorable. We were at a dog farm 3 hours outside of Seoul in a very, very bad place. We met a golden retriever that I named Soul, and we took him back to America too. He lives in Bakersfield now.
How'd you end up getting connected with that?
Wanted to make a difference. I started seeing. Well, I remember Yulin being a really big deal last year. It was the most popular hashtag, and then I just stopped hearing things about it. And it was like everyone went about their business. So I got connected with this gal, Nami Kim, and just said we should do something about this. We started taking in dogs from Korea, and we had taken in probably 5 or 6. And then, Nami said, why don't you come out here and we'll go do some stuff together. You can help me take video. And so basically I posed as like an undercover. I posed as like an international investigator, and I took videos and pictures, and we went all over the place to different farms and different meat markets, and it was definitely a life experience. Then we got hooked up with the Soy Dog Foundation, which is in Thailand.
Yep.
Soy Dog Foundation does dog meat trade rescue and street dog rescue in Thailand. They usually have large busts at the border of Vietnam and Thailand. So we've been there a couple of times and brought back a lot of dogs, and it's been a really good coalition, Soy Dog Foundation in particular. Getting back to our prison program, that's one of the coolest things. It is probably the coolest thing I've ever been involved in. The prison program is out of the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitations, California City. It's a large prison, and every one of those men will be released into the public. Almost all of them are at the end of serving long sentences. So I'd say the average prison sentence of the 17 men involved in our program is probably 10 years that they've been inside. Most of them are not old. I think probably our oldest participant is maybe 50. And he's been in prison for 13 years. And it's been beautiful. It's a lot of different races interacting with, we had 7 dogs living at the penitentiary with them. They're getting trained very hard, these inmates. Every Tuesday, we're out there all day with 4 trainers training them. They have homework. They have to write about their feelings, what they're experiencing. They're getting way outside their comfort zone and confronting a lot of things, a lot of issues, their own anger, their own position in life, interacting with other races. It's really turned into a beautiful experience. And these men have laughed more in the last 3 months than they have in the 15 years they've been in prison. And they're a brotherhood now, a black, yellow, and white brotherhood.
Right.
That is a very unique thing to have spring up inside a prison. It's also changed the whole dynamic of the yard. Everything is just mellow. It's different when the dogs are there.
How often do the dogs visit, and how'd you choose the dogs?
The dogs live there.
Oh, great.
Yeah, they stay in the pod B3. So the dogs and the inmates train the dogs to pass the Canine Good Citizen exam, which is a very difficult certification. They all passed, every single dog, and we have 4 pit bulls. We had a Cane Corso, 2 Chihuahuas. They all passed, and so did the men. The men graduate with certificate of competency for training. Many of them can re-enroll and have. So next round, we're going to have 10 dogs and 26 inmates. Basically, the entire pod will be it's called Positive Change. Will be Positive Change inmates. It's amazing.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. How did you model it?
There's a lot of prison programs out there. They have them in Colorado. They have some in Los Angeles County. But we modeled it through our own training methods and how we have learned to train. We modeled it after energy. We use a lot of positive reinforcement, but we also use energy training. So that is understanding your own body, your own awareness, what you are experiencing, what you are going through emotionally. If you're aware of that and can adjust that accordingly, then you'll be a much more effective dog trainer. Also noticing certain behaviors in dogs. You can't just keep force feeding a dog treats and expect them to, we need to keep them calm. Getting them really excited like human beings tend to do, is not a good thing inside a penitentiary. Dogs like to be calm. If you look at my dogs, who are the most comfortable, well-balanced, dogs up here, they very rarely get hyper excited unless I ask them to.
Any possibility that the program expands a little bit?
The program is going to expand. We'll have 26 inmates starting again in a week with 10 dogs. And then hopefully we're going to catch on at the Tehachapi Federal Penitentiary here in Tehachapi, which is a level 4 security. It's level 1 through 4, but that's a great facility that I'm hoping we'll expand to after our next round. They will have job training skills. They'll be able to work at a shelter for a rescue as dog walkers, dog sitters, anything like that. They have a tremendous amount of ability. These guys are inundated with dog training for 14 weeks, and then now they're re-enrolling. So in many cases, they'll have 6 months or a year of apprentice training under 4 very accomplished trainers, all of whom work at the Dog Psychology Center in Santa Clarita. So these trainers are master trainers themselves, and these inmates are getting master training guidance.
Part of the population that works with the prison, you do have 4 pit bulls involved. For those who just don't know much about pit bulls, right, that everybody's just sensitized to the bad stories, not the good. What do you see from your perspective?
Every dog should be evaluated on its own. I don't think you should ever prejudge an entire breed of dog based on intelligence that you gather from a few. I think we learned that lesson. I thought we learned that lesson hundreds of years ago, if not reinforced it during the civil rights movement, that judging a person or a thing based on the color of their skin rather than the content of their character is ridiculous, is ludicrous. So I see this widespread panic when it comes to pit bulls, which if they just had a different name, if they were called butterfly bulls or god dogs, then we would have I don't think we'd have an issue with them. But this kind of pattern of vilifying a breed of dog is not something new. We had it with the Doberman, we had it with the Rottweiler, and then now it just happens to be the pit bull. And I'm not gonna blow sunshine up anyone's behind. Pit bulls are powerful breeds that have the ability, as we bred them to fight. They have the ability. It's up to us to understand their energy level, where their energy level is at, and be able to identify, what they are going through at that moment to be able to control it. We've created, to a large degree, these animals. We need to be responsible for that. We need to combat it with understanding and compassion, as opposed to just our current reaction, which is 1,000% fear-based. And again, as we've learned throughout the history of mankind, reacting out of fear is virtually never the right way to go.
Well said. Thank you, Zach.
I love them. A pit bull saved my life. A pit bull saved my life, and I have 2 that live here. I have one that can't be around other dogs. We got him from a fighting situation, and I can have him on leash near other dogs. I just can't have him off leash playing with other dogs. But I wouldn't say that he's vicious. He's just, that's what he learned throughout the course of his life. That's the frequency that he was kept at by human beings. That's the frequency that he was allowed to stay at and that he was encouraged to be at. So it's all he knows. And getting that out of him has been a challenge. But he's gotten much, much, much better. Just like any other dog has a skill. Cattle dogs herd and bloodhounds track, and pit bulls are powerful and they can fight. But it doesn't mean that's what they are. It doesn't mean that defines them. Getting rid of those prejudices, because they really do nobody any good, and they harbor a frequency within us all that is so unhealthy. To be able to try and say that thing is this certain way, period, is so unhealthy, and so it's just venomous. It's not something we need in our culture. We don't need it when it comes to people, and we don't need it when it comes to dogs. The fact that we have breed restrictions in places like Colorado that are so hip, they've legalized weed, for medicinal use and other uses, understandably, but for some reason have banned a breed of dog. It baffles my mind.
Right.
That just is simply mind-boggling. And for people to take pride in this, there are people in Scotland and England and in other areas around the United States that take pride in passing breed restrictions. I just cannot believe that, and it's because we've really developed a culture of not understanding dog psychology. We treat our animals like little babies, rather than trying to understand what true dog psychology is. There's a way to love our dogs and really treat them with compassion. And the best way to do that is to understand what they're made of and why they behave the way they do. And to understand dog psychology is not to understand human psychology. Human psychology and dog psychology are two very different things. And if we try and apply human psychology to dogs, we're going to be let down over and over again.
Thank you so much for giving your perspective on that. We're talking to Zach Skow, founder of Marleys Mutts. What's the best way to find Marleys Mutts, whether it's social media, the website, donations?
The best way to find us is Marleys Mutts Dog Rescue on Facebook, or just go to marleysmutts.org. That's our website. We're on Instagram at Marleys Mutts. I think Twitter is Dog Rescue.
Well, I mean, you're an animal rescue, spay-neuter resource, education, prison programs. What's next on the list for Marleys Mutts?
We've been doing 12-step programs at the mission at Kern County, so we involve our dogs in 12-step programs to, again, help rescue dogs rescue people, and that's taking them through the 12 steps, one step at a time, 1 week at a time, with our dogs involved, and it's pretty special. And we're hoping to get our own facility down in Bakersfield, our own canine community center.
Oh, no kidding!
What we're striving for. Yeah, so that's what we're really working towards.
Now, what's that going to take as far as fundraising, resources? What's the timeline?
I'd love to have it completed in a year, but we need money for that. We have a couple of good leads, but we need a benefactor is what we need.
Is this going to be new construction?
It's a combination of both. We have a place in mind that is going to be perfect, and it's going to require some new construction, but there's also a house on the property.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. When you think back upon the past few years, and Zach, you look in the mirror, what do you see in yourself?
That's an interesting question. I think for the longest time, I really didn't know who I was, but I did know very much so that I didn't like myself. I didn't love myself. I would have really sincere bouts of depression and not loving myself. It's one of the reasons why I take criticism so poorly, is because I think in some cases those people are right. If they said something bad about me, well, shucks. Subconsciously I agree with them. Over the last year in particular, especially 2016, I've learned to love myself, and I've learned to be proud of myself. And my dad has been telling it to me all my life. So has my mom. My mom is been sober now for 4.5 years, and we recently got to speak together. My mom was a 10-minute speaker. I then spoke for an hour after her, and we got to tell our stories. And to be able to hear those, hear my mom's story and my story, I have everything to be not only grateful for, but to be divinely stoked about every breath that I take. And it takes work, and it takes reminding myself to be grateful. Grateful is not a frequency I operate naturally on, but I am more grateful than I've ever been, and I feel more alive than I ever have been, and I feel more in love with myself than I ever have been. Those are all kind of new developments, and I'm happy to be making forward progress.
We want to say thank you to Zach Skow for sharing his story. It just goes to show you can never give up on anyone. Whether it's people or dogs, make sure to reach out to those who need it the most. If you want to learn more about Marleys Mutts Dog Rescue, see some wonderful photos of their dogs, or make a donation, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/68. We also want to say thank you to Dave Lee of the Modern Life Podcast Network. Several months ago, he suggested to me on Twitter that we reach out to Zach, and we're so glad he did. So thank you, Dave. We also want to say thank you to Cindy Young and Amy Klein for making this interview possible. If you'd like to nominate someone to be a future guest on Paw Print, simply email us at thisispawprint@gmail.com or go to our contact page, thisispawprint.com/contact. If you want to listen to more episodes of Paw Print, you can find us on your favorite podcast app like iTunes, Pocket Casts, or SoundCloud. Make sure to hit subscribe to get the latest episodes immediately. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Look for This Is Paw Print, all one word. We want to say thank you to all of you out there for sharing Paw Print with your friends and family. And remember, you spread a positive message of love and peace by saving an animal. Have a great day, everyone, and see you next time for another great episode in our Pit Bull series on Paw Print.
Paw Print is a production of EVER Education.
You can't handle
know the truth.